Okay, a key part of the Democrats' climate agenda is likely to be cut from the reconciliation package after opposition from Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Manchin announced his opposition to a central program in President Biden's clean energy plan that would replace coal and gas-fired power plants with wind, solar, and nuclear energy. All right, New York Times energy and environmental policy reporter Coral Davenport joins us right now with more on this. So what's going to be left, and is Manchin going to be able to keep the president to this and cut out one of these key provisions?
Well, Mika, what we've seen all along is like what Manchin wants, Manchin gets in this space. As you know, he is one of the two crucial up or down votes on the entire package. And that package, that broad social spending, environmental education package, contains almost all of President Biden's agenda. So he has a ton of leverage. Of course, Senator Manchin comes from a coal and gas producing state. And this policy, it's called the Clean Electricity Program. It really is sort of the core and the teeth of the climate provisions in this bill. It is designed to pay electric utilities to shut down coal and gas plants and get new and sort of slowly year over year transition to wind, solar, nuclear, basically clean energy. So end game for this program is to cut the use of the fossil fuels that are a key part of his home state's economy. And you know, I think for several weeks there was a sense that maybe Senator Manchin would be able to, that would kind of throw a lifeline to those fossil fuels. Didn't seem to happen. So at the moment, it sounds like it's, you know, over the weekend, the people that I talked to 4 people who said this thing is really dead. In answer to your other question, there are other climate provisions in there. There's about $300 billion in tax incentives, in benefits for renewable energy, for electric vehicles. So that's almost assuredly going to be in there. I think the Democrats are going to try to plus up that money if they take out this other program. But a lot of analysts I've talked to have said the problem with this is it's a lot of carrots. It's a lot of sort of throwing a lot of money at green energy. But if you take out this provision, you don't really have any sticks. You don't really have any penalty or punishment for taking away the dirty energy. That's kind of the thinking of how this is significantly does weaken those climate provisions.
Yeah, New York Times energy and environmental policy reporter Coral Davenport, thank you very much. And Jonathan Lemire, I mean, this is an issue that is extremely important to President Biden, and John Kerry is leading the effort on climate change. How much of a hit does that, you know, part of the Biden agenda take with what Manchin wants?
Yeah, Mika, this will be significant if it indeed comes to pass. And White House aides right now are indeed, as just mentioned, trying to figure out other ways to include climate provisions. But if the clean energy portion dips out, it's going to be a blow to this president who, in just 2 weeks' time, is heading to Scotland for one of the most significant climate summits in years. And it will be difficult for him to say that the U.S. has returned to its state of moral leadership on climate change if he walks in there empty-handed, if he walks in there saying, look, we couldn't get it done at home, how can we ask you all to do it? And this, taking just a half step back, as I report today in my new story of the Associated Press, is that this is a really tough stretch. These next 2 weeks are going to be really crucial for this president. That summit's looming, and he wants to show progress on these bills before then, but also the congressional deadlines are at the end of the month to get that bipartisan infrastructure deal signed, because transportation funding is about to run out. They want to be able to show at least real progress on the reconciliation package by then, too. And this also, or first few days of November, Virginia governor's race, that election. And there's real concerns right now about where Terry McAuliffe stands. White House Democrats believe he's still the favorite here, looking at maybe a narrow win, but a loss, or if he only wins by a point or two, could be interpreted as a sign of Republican strength and further weaken Biden.
Yeah, you know, Reverend Al, let's just talk pure politics here. You got Joe Manchin, who represents West Virginia, was governor of West Virginia a couple of terms. That's where he's grown up. That's where he's lived his entire life. It's not Brooklyn. It's not San Francisco. Coal has been king there his entire life. It has dropped precipitously. The coal jobs have been leaving the state precipitously. If you look at U.S. carbon emissions, they have dropped by 33% since 2005, according to Carnegie Mellon. And coal is one of the main reasons why, getting a lot of coal plants offline. And so let's talk politics. Progressives across the country can try to move Manchin on this as much as they want, whether they like it or they hate it. But I don't think they're going to push him any further on this coal issue. And they're going to probably have to look to other issues environmentally to get him moving, because obviously, it's going to be hard for him to go back and say, I know all the coal jobs are going away, but we're going to make them go away at an even faster rate.
Well, in my discussions with some of the progressives that want to see something done, and in my meeting or two with Senator Manchin, where this has come up, and our meetings has been more around the voting rights issue and police reform, I think Manchin's position is that I want to get where we are in a good place in terms of doing what is right for the environment. But I've got to bring a lot of my constituents, a lot of the coal industry in my state along with me, and don't rush me when I'm getting people to move in the right direction, but you can't ask them to commit financial suicide. Let's work together in a way that we can sustain them and do what's right for the environment. That seems to be Manchin's message. Some of those on the environmental side are saying, let's see where we can work with this. Others are saying my way or the highway. I think that you need to have a balance of both. There's no way we can compromise having a good environment, but you have to get people there in a way that you don't pull the rug from under them in terms of their income and their financial standing at the same time. Well, the balance has to be found here.
And Rev, let's just talk generally about this. We saw a lot of people talking about it this weekend. We're about to read a Michelle Goldberg op-ed, but this progressives versus moderates fight. Progressives need to understand, and I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying this is the reality. They are not going to shame Manchin into a $3.5 trillion bill or a $2.5 trillion bill. They're not going to shame cinema either. They can hold up the infrastructure bill all they want to hold it up and say we're not going to pass until we get what we want in our other bill. They're not going to move on that. They're just not. And so I do wonder, with a close Virginia governor's race, with Joe Biden's approval ratings dropping, with it being obvious now, progressives, who I think have been very patient, but progressives have been given a very clear signal and message from Manchin and Sinema, whether they like it or not. It doesn't matter whether they like it or not. It just doesn't. This is reality. They need 50 votes, and then they need to pass it in the House. They're not connecting the two bills together. So the question is, under any circumstances, do Democrats leave a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill on the table and just completely fail this year? Or do they pass the infrastructure bill, give Terry McAuliffe something to campaign on in Virginia, give Joe Biden something to campaign across the country on, give Democrats a reason for hope, and then get back to work on that reconciliation bill, since they're not going to be linked by the people who matter the most anyway?
At the end of the day, we have to start defining progressives as those that make progress. There is no progress in losing it all. Let's start there. Certainly those on the ground, whether it's those of us concerned about policing or voting or environment, whatever it is, are not going to feel great about you took a champion stand and failed us totally. And, by the way, cost the Virginia race for McAuliffe and torpedoed the Democratic White House. Do we press them? Do we get as much as we can? Absolutely. You never take your foot off the gas. Do we say that the Progressive Caucus has been unusually and admirably patient? Yes. But at some
Yes.
point, you've got to say, we've got to come home with some wins because people are really suffering. These are real people with real problems that we have been elected to try and deal with. And there's a difference between progressives and fanatics. And I think that some people just want to make their point no matter what, and they care less about the people they claim to speak for. You can't lead people that you don't even like.
Yeah, and Mika, I've said this to Republicans so many times in my life, saying it to Democrats and saying it to progressives who have shown an awful lot of patience. But at the end of the day, Bismarck said it, politics is the art of the possible. It is the art of the attainable. It is the art of the next best. What is possible? I mean, time is running out in Virginia. Time is running out for this session of Congress. It's time to stop talking about what ought to be and to start focusing on what is and what's the best deal you can get out of what is, not what ought to be.
So